Good evening, all the wonderful listeners around the world listening to KVRX 91.7 FM. It's Monday night and 6 p.m. and you are listening to your most favorite show, Nostalgic with Sadiq, with your favorite host, Sadiq. Firstly, I want to thank you all for all those inspiring fan mails and tons of love that I get every week. And yes, dear listeners, my show is dedicated to all of you who take great pride in recollecting childhood memories and treasuring those wonderful moments of the past. Nostalgic with Sadiq is a celebration of nostalgia, and to pay tribute to those wonderful moments of the past, we invite some wonderful people in our show to celebrate their experiences. And our guest tonight is a talent in the true sense of the term. She is an academic theorist, an artist, a performer. She is currently the associate professor and the founding director of the Advanced Communication Technologies Laboratory, which is popularly called the ACTLab, and the New Media Initiative in the Department of Radio, TV and Film in the University of Texas. She is also the Wolfgang Kohler Professor of Media and Performance at the European Graduate School, a senior artist at the Banff Center, Humanities Research Institute Fellow at the University of California, and she pursued a successful multiple career in film, music, experimental neurology, writing, engineering, computer programming, and she is also the founder and the academic discipline of the transgender studies. She is none other than Sandy Stone. Sandy, welcome to our show. It's my rare privilege to have you in my show, in the popular show called Nostalgic with Sadiq. This is a small token for you. Please accept it on our behalf.
Thank you, Sadiq.
Okay, Sandy, you are a theorist, artist, performer, science fiction author, engineer, filmmaker, computer programmer, and all at the same time. I mean, how does it feel like to be called Sandy Stone?
Tired. Not really. I don't practice them all at the same time, usually, when I can help it. I just do what I can in the time that I have.
Okay. So how do you tackle so many things together at the same time?
Well, if anyone who's interested in multiple things ought to do them. I mean, we only have so much time to live, and there's so many amazing and interesting things to do, and work that really needs to be done, important work.
Okay.
So you just try to fit in as much as you can.
Exactly. So, and I think you find time for everything in your life, and you do so many things together, but you manage everything, and I think that calls for an amazing time management.
Well, I don't by any means manage everything I would like to be doing, but I get in some. And I'm not a good time manager, by the way. I just do whatever I can do.
Okay. Sandy, you were born in New York, and we came to know that you are extremely adverse to formal education. Tell us something about your childhood.
Well, being averse to formal education means that you don't follow a standard track in which you go to college and you go to university and all that sort of thing. I ran away from those things. So instead, what I did was to find individual professors who were doing work that I was interested in. In the New England corridor, that's not hard. There are great universities all over the place there.
Yes, yes.
And they were filled with amazing professors. You know, the East Coast is like that. So I would, in my silly, childish way, well, you know, my silly teen, preteen way, I would go knock on their doors and say, I'm Sandy Stone, I'm interested in your work, and I'd really like to audit your class. And they'd usually look at me and say, well, why should I let you in? And I say, well, because. And then I talk about their work with them. And they'd usually say, okay, come on and sit in. So in that way, I learned a bunch of very different, diverse things that didn't add up to a traditional education, but were in a lot of ways better. In some ways it can be scary to do that, But I recommend it to anybody who really wants an education rather than a diploma, because you get a much better education doing that.
So I think the system of auditing classes have also changed over the years, doesn't it? Like the way you audited classes and now things, people audit the classes.
Yeah, it's quite a bit different now. People are afraid of auditing, and I think they're afraid also that the professor will say no, and they're afraid of that rejection.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
But it pays to ask. If you don't bet, you can't win. So at some point you have to overcome your fear and go and ask the professor. And usually, if the professor is good, then they're looking for people who are interested in their work. And if you're genuinely interested in their work and you're not just looking for another 3 units, usually they'll let you in.
Exactly. So the level of commitment is always remain the same. It's like the committed people always get a chance.
I think so.
Exactly. Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world.
Sandy, we were just talking about your childhood, how you went to people and started talking and all. Tell us something about your childhood. In your childhood, you were making wonderful electronic stuffs. As you were a child prodigy, if I could say. And when other girls of your age were playing with Barbie dolls, you were making 8mm films, and you were making films on space, and you also made a pirate radio station. So tell us something about that.
Okay. First of all, remember, I'm a transgender, so I was not a little girl, I was a little boy. Now the thing is, if I had been a little girl, I probably would not have been allowed to do the things that I did. At that time, girls who were interested in being geeks were strongly discouraged. Now, I think the stronger ones survived. We certainly know that. There were some that did. But there's no way to know what would have happened if I had grown up as a little girl. I grew up as a little boy. I knew I was a girl inside, but that was being a girl inside. That just makes things difficult for you in different ways. So growing up as a little boy, I was more encouraged to at least study technical things, mechanical things. I was deeply, deeply interested in anything mechanical or electrical, anything that moved. And my parents encouraged me, not as much as I wanted to be. I just went beyond their encouragement. But that meant that I was a geek. Now at that time we didn't even have that word. Now
It's a new invention.
It's a relatively new invention. But what it meant is that if you were a geek, if you were a nerd, you were interested primarily in your electronic stuff. So I spent most of my time doing that. Today, you would spend a lot of time at your computer.
Facebooking and all these things.
Yeah, and you could program forever. You could program to your heart's content. I did the same thing, but before computer programming. And it was intense. It was fascinating.
Well, there's something very interesting that the Christian University of Dallas called you the handmaiden of Antichrist. Why was it so?
They thought that I was teaching a course called Sex Change 101. And that I was teaching, their exact words were, she is teaching our children to change their sex. And I thought, well, I wish it were possible to have a course like that. Not that I would necessarily want to teach one, or that there are that many students who would want to learn, but just the idea that we would have that level of freedom here at the university to be able to do that. Still, I'm deeply honored to be thought of as a handmaiden of the Antichrist. Bring it on. That implies that that university, the people at that university, think that I'm a very powerful person, that I can influence people to that extent. That's their fantasy, but fine. Let them believe it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I get called names all the time. What they generally mean to me is that the people who call those names feel that you have the power to do the things that they claim you can. And, frequently you can't. One of the people in my department called me a toxic, debilitating menace, which just indicates that in his mind, I have that kind of power over him, the power to be toxic and debilitating. I'm not toxic and debilitating, I'm just Sandy Stone.
Exactly. Well, this question again brings me to another big question, is like, how difficult was it for you to be a transgender as a child?
Horrible. Excruciating, awful, difficult, impossible. But that was true for everybody who was a transy, because there were no LGBT groups, there were no support organizations, no counseling. I mean, at one point when I was a kid, I went to counseling for something else. My parents were worried about the fact that I wasn't getting along in school well, so he sent me to counseling. And the counselor knew there was something wrong, but he didn't know what. And I didn't know how to tell him.
Okay.
So for several years, we just danced around this horrible secret that sat in the middle of the room that neither of us knew how to talk about. If he had known what it was, he might have said something, but he didn't. And I didn't know how to tell him. I didn't even have the words. At that time, to say something like, well, I think I'm a girl, or later, I think I'm a woman, they would go, what? You think you're a what? Oh my God! So you hide. You hide and you deny. And three things generally can happen. Either you successfully hide it and you go through life and never think of it. And you can do things. You can, if you are a male to female transy, you can say, marry a nice woman, and you become masculine, you get very macho, and you become the provider in the family, and you go out there and you do the work.
It's a very manly thing to do.
You have kids, and you have a house, and it's all very nice, and it anchors you down. And for some people, that's very successful. They go on in life. But the unlucky ones will wake up at the age of maybe 50 or 60, and they'll look around one day and they'll say, oh my God, I never lived my life. I never really became who I was. I just faked it. And then they have to face the consequences of that. And other people go on and say, I can't bear it. I'm terrified, but I have to be who I am. And those are the ones who go on and come out and try to live their lives in the open. Now it's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier, I understand. I mean, things were very conservative. People were conservative in those days. And now people are understanding, much more understanding as compared to. Do you think so?
I do. I definitely do. The only person out when I was a kid was Christine Jurgensen.
Okay.
And she was not that much of a role model.
Okay.
She was a celebrity. She wasn't somebody you could think of as living down the block.
Yeah.
So
it's different for celebrities. Yeah.
So I eventually, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I finally realized that I was spending so much energy on hiding from myself and everybody else that if I didn't do something about it, I was going to burn up. I was just going to use all of my time and energy to hide. That was crazy. So I did something, and it was the most wonderful thing I could ever have done. I was never sorry. I never looked back.
Has life changed after that?
Absolutely. Completely. I was able to stop using most of my energy to hide and be able to turn my life to being myself. And once you get over the initial stages of just learning to be who you are, then you're able to go on in the world and have a life like everybody else, more or less. I mean, you're still crazy, you're still whoever you are, but you can have a life.
So that's how when you start thinking, start beginning to think that you're being true to yourself. Well, this brings us to a question that, like, as a high school student, you went to the Bell Telephone Laboratories in Murray Hill, New Jersey. Tell us something about the experience.
Well, Bell Labs was everybody's wet dream of a career. It was an enormous, the building was 3/4 of a mile long. It was divided up into several parts. The door, the lobby, was like a temple. You walk in and you go, oh my God, I'm in geek heaven. And every famous East Coast engineer was there. It was a time when AT&T had a monopoly on the telephone business, and they had money to burn, and they were able to support an organization that did nothing but basic research, stuff that didn't have to make money, even though it did. It made a lot of money for them. So there were a lot of the people who came to be famous were in the building. You could walk down the hall, and there would be
all the celebrities.
All of the people who invented the transistor, the people who designed modern telephones. And I worked on a lot of those projects.
Was it also the same time when you composed this music for the Encyclopedia Britannica?
No, I composed the music for Encyclopedia Britannica later on when I was a freshman in college, which I didn't do until much later. I went out in the world and I did things, and then eventually I got slightly over my fear of being in college. So I went to college. And I composed what I did for Art, What Is It and Why Is It, which was the name of the film, was what would now be called, I think, musique concrète.
The definitions have changed.
Yes. Basically what it was I was working with analog tape equipment, and I had built a tape recorder. I couldn't afford to buy one, so I had built one. I got an old suitcase, and I built it in a suitcase so I could haul it around. And I made it out of old vacuum cleaner motors and a smaller induction motor for the capstan, the actual tape drive. I didn't, at that time, make the recording heads because I had an old Webster Chicago tape recorder that I could take the recording heads out of. But later I actually made the recording heads from scratch. So I recorded sounds that I made using modified musical instruments or actual ambient sounds. And then I cut them up into pieces, rearranged them, added reverberation, which all had to be done with hardware because there were no computer reverberation at that time. And when I got I knew what the film was going to look like, so I did something based on my idea of what would go well with their film.
So this was also the time when you were working with people like Jimi Hendrix and the Van Morris, the Grateful Dead, and all these famous people?
No, not really. This was way before that.
Okay.
This was when I was a freshman in high school. I started working with Jimi Hendrix when I left St. John's. After I was a senior there, I went to New York and went to the record plant and walked in and said, "I am the greatest recording engineer in the world." And they looked at me as if I were a dead fish, which you would expect.
Well, your next act was performed in Santa Cruz, California, where you undertook this gender course, and you were publishing magazines like the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction and The Galaxy. How was this experience?
I had always had an active imagination.
Yeah.
At that time, science fiction was still something of a new genre.
Yes.
The magazines were just beginning to be accepted.
Exactly.
And it was, part of the problem was it was easy. It was too easy.
Okay.
I decided that maybe I should find out something about writing, so I went to a community college course in writing, and the teacher said, everybody write a story. So I wrote a story, and the teacher looked at it and said, "Oh my God, send this to a magazine." So I sent it to a magazine, and they bought it instantly. There was no, "Would you please rewrite this? Would you please add?" They just bought it, and they said, "Please send us more stuff."
Oh.
So I wrote another one, and I sent it to them, and they bought it again. And I wrote them a third one, and I didn't hear from them for a month. And not knowing anything about what writing was like, I thought, "Oh, it's terrible, they don't want it." So I wrote another one, I sent it to another magazine, and they bought it instantly. And then they started fighting over it. And that was my writing career. It was like that. And then at one point, someone who wanted to be a writer wrote me and said, "Can you give me advice about becoming a writer?" And no, I can't. I don't know anything about becoming a writer. All I know is that I could write and I could sell anything that I wrote. So that's not becoming a writer.
Exactly. So the next big thing that happened to you is, like, personally, in the 1980s you built your own computer. And more important than that is that what I want to know is the fact that about your house. You have a tiny cottage with 15 computers, 10,000 books, and a monster video. Tell me something about this.
Okay, I bought that house right after I got my job here, and my intention was to live alone in it. I did not anticipate having a partner, so I bought a very small house near Hyde Park.
Okay.
Now, of course, the realtor developers think we're in Hyde Park, but we're not actually in Hyde Park. And it was tiny because that was what I could afford.
Yeah.
Then I had 5,000 books. They fit in the house. Then I fell in love with a guy who had 5,000 more books. So we wound up
10,000 books.
And we're both nerds,
Oh.
so we each use computers around the clock in our work. So that's where the 15 computers come from. Simbi has 3 in his office. I have 4 in my office, and we have a rack outside in a shed off the outside of the main building that has 8 computers in it, which are the servers that connect us to the internet. We have multiple connections to the internet, so that if one of our providers goes down, we still have another one, and we have off-site backups and so forth. So it's very, very heavy technically involved.
It's completely digital life.
Yeah, our lives are
Yeah.
very digital, but I also make things physically, so
Okay.
I have that.
Yeah, the hardware.
And our enormous video and sound system is because we absolutely love movies,
Okay.
but we don't like movie theaters.
Oh yeah.
So we have a 12-foot diameter movies, not diameter, straight across 12 feet, whatever its diagonal is, I don't know. And a sound system with, it's 5.1 surround. We have 4 kilowatt amplifiers driving the loudspeakers, so occasionally the police come when we're showing a movie because it's very loud, and we like John Woo movies.
Oh,
so they're very loud.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the way we have arranged our lives. We don't own a TV, and we don't have connection to cable.
Okay.
So we're completely divorced from what's happening with television.
Yeah. Now this is a very tough question, I know, because, like, I mean, when you have free time, what do you do? Like, I know you are extremely busy and you are awake all throughout the night, because most of the emails that I wrote to you, they were replied in the early morning. Yeah, I remember the emails used to come at around 4 a.m. in the morning, and I used to wonder, ma'am is not sleeping? So, like, I've also heard that, like, you are really passionate about surfing and flying, hiking in the Swiss Alps. So, like, what do you do in the free time?
Well, it's a good question as to what free time is, but I think that I could realistically answer that by saying that I have friends who fly radio-controlled model airplanes,
Okay.
and I fly with them.
Okay.
So you never get away from being a nerd, because what we do is figure out ways to make the radio controls better, and to mount cameras on the planes, and fly them around and take pictures from the air. But that's the closest that I get. I also build robots,
Oh my
things
God.
like that.
What is your favorite robot called?
My favorite robot is a project I'm working on for a gallery installation right now, which they're called BattleBots, and it's a swarm of little robots that can talk to each other. They have loudspeakers and microphones on it, and the way this works is they swarm around and they kind of beep at each other. And you can go up to the swarm and you can pick one of these up and you can talk to it.
Okay.
And when you put it back down, it will run and find another one.
Okay.
And it will tell it what you said.
Okay.
So after a while, the rumor
Okay.
of what you were saying spreads through the swarm.
All
But
right.
it will change like a game of telephone.
Alright, Sandy, it has been very interesting so far talking to you, but now to make things all the more interesting for our listeners, we have introduced a very exciting segment in our show. It's called the Fast Track on the Memory Lane. In this section, what we do is we ask you some really quick questions about your childhood, and we expect you to answer them really quickly. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let me take a deep breath first. Okay, here we go.
All right. So
Hey.
fast track on the memory lane. Who was your best childhood friend?
Myself.
Okay.
My imaginary playmate, Bilgewater.
Okay. And your biggest fear as a child was?
My biggest fear of a child was being discovered. Found out.
Your favorite food as a child?
Liver and onions.
Okay.
Because I was anemic and that's what they fed me, so I got to love
Yeah. Okay. And your favorite song?
it. As a child?
Yes, as a child.
Shaboom.
Can you sing it for us?
Hey laddie ding dong, a ling a ling a lay, boom bio, and oop a doodle day. Life could be a dream, life could be a dream, sweetheart. Hello, hello again, shaboom, and hoping you meet again. Do you want me to sing the whole thing? Or
Oh, it's
something?
wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sandy, life is indeed a dream. We are going to the next question. Your favorite color?
Red.
Red. Your most treasured toy?
Oh God, that's an interesting question. Quick, someone, quick! A stuffed plush Tux, which is the Linux mascot, is a little
Yeah,
penguin.
exactly. Yeah. Okay. And your favorite cartoon character?
Doonesbury.
Okay. And your favorite sports? Watching or playing, whatever.
Oh boy, yeah, I'm not much into sports. I would have to say probably surfing.
Okay.
That's about the only sport I do, really.
Trekking?
I'm sorry?
Mountain climbing?
Oh yeah, if you mountain climbing, yeah, I wasn't thinking of that as a sport, but
Okay,
yes.
Yes. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Your best dessert?
Dessert?
Yeah.
Chocolate.
Okay. And your best actor?
Best actor?
Yeah.
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. Great. And the best present that Santa has ever given you?
A brand new iMac.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay, you're a Mac person?
I'm a Mac person.
Okay.
Well, with what I do, I have to be an everything person.
Yes.
I'm primarily a Mac person,
Okay.
but because the Mac will run Windows or Linux,
Okay.
I'm also a heavy Linux person.
Oh.
I have to be in my work, so I can reboot my Mac. Of course, in my work, it's easier to have another computer that runs Linux, but when I travel, all I have to do is carry my little Mac laptop.
Yeah. Mac makes everything possible.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they're wonderful. One of these days, I'll be able to afford a Mac Air.
Yeah, sure. Okay, many congratulations, Sandy. You did very well in this segment. But you know, Sandy, the tragedy with life is that all great things must come to end. I mean, it was great talking to you, Sandy. Thank you so much for coming to our show. But we won't let you go. We have a little token for you. Token of love for you.
A brown plush bear.
Yeah, and as long as you look at this teddy bear, you're going to remember, I hope you're going to remember the wonderful days of your childhood, and we wish you all the best for your life and all the things that you do. We wish that God blesses you with and makes you do all the more great things for life. From the entire team of KVRX 91.7 and the entire team of Nostalgic with Sadiq, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming to my show and making this show such a wonderful success.
Well, I thank you, and the plush bear thanks you,
Okay.
and Tux thanks you.
Thank you. Is there any last minute message that you want to give your audience?
Be yourself. Work at it hard. Nobody else is going to do it for you. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
That's Sandy Stone for us. It was great pleasure for us to be with Sandy Stone. And this is Sadiq signing off. Stay tuned, stay nostalgic. We'll be there in the studio next week, same time. Have a great time. Thank you.